output, and by default it's using a color mode, and it's gray. So if we were to change the hue on this, it doesn't do anything because our saturation, which is S, is set to 0. So if we increase our saturation and then we slide H, which stands for hue, then we can change the color around, and then we have purple bricks. But we don't want purple bricks. We want red bricks, or a reddish brick. Something just to note, roughness uses a grayscale. It doesn't use color. So, and obviously you can tell that because of the input node here, it's gray. So this is a uniform color node, and so is this. But this one is using a color mode, and this one is using a grayscale node because we don't need color information. So even though this is uniform color, it's the same node, but the node got turned into a grayscale, which is something to keep in mind. If this was a grayscale, technically it would still work because gray is still a color, but you wouldn't be able to plug this color into. Okay, I don't know what I'm talking about, so just ignore that. Maybe I have to cut that out. But for example, you can't plug you can't plug a grayscale into this one. You'll get this little red dashed line. Okay, so I'm not totally wrong, just half right. Okay, anyways. Okay, so let's start with our color. Now, I'm gonna build this in a way where all the color variation that we have will be driven by the original color. And that'll make a little more sense when we start. So I'm just going to drag this all the way over here to give ourselves as much room as possible. And let's start with the brick color that we want. Sorry, did I say brick? I meant tile color. So let's see. Alright, I just have to go back to see the color red that I used because I really like the one I ended up with. So I'm just going to color pick. Boom. And I'm just going to round up. So we're going to do 0.39 just to make it simple for you guys. 0.7 and 0.675. Okay. So like I said, yeah, the H stands for hue, the S stands for saturation, and then the V stands for the letter V, which I want to say value, but that doesn't sound right. Basically, this is how bright or dark something is. So whatever that is, that's what that is. Okay. So our uniform color is just painting everything uniformly with this color. Obviously, that's a good start, but it's not enough. So I want to paint the stuff, the crevices, everything that is not the tile. So like this right here, this flat area. I want this to be one color and everything else, the brick, to be a different color. So similar to our wear damage, we're going to need a mask. So we are going to grab this blend, which is the last blend that we did for the cuts. And I'm going to drag off, oops, and type in scan. You can use levels, but I'm going to use scans because I know exactly what I want to tune. And I'm going to move this up here. Now, this is going to be kind of annoying. We have to follow this. Follow. Oh, I got it right. Okay. And then let's put it over here. I'm going to move this over here. Right there. Okay. So I'm going to move this to 0.5 just to see what we're looking at. And then I'm going to increase my contrast all the way up because I want to create a harsh mask because it's either going to be red or not red. So we're actually going to change our position and our contrast all the way to 1 to get this. So this is what we had before, and then this is what we have now. If I turn my contrast down, okay. If we look closely here at our slopey cut, the gradient ends like about over here. It's hard to see, but you can see that there's like a pixel here, right? So we want to make sure our contrast is up, but we need to also change our position, because if we just do our contrast, the tile technically extends this far, but by changing the contrast, we're missing out on this. So let's see what that looks like. I'm gonna do a blend here. And then I am going to you can see here that it has a half orange, half gray. That's because you can put in whatever you want. But if we're working with color, then can I put a gray on top? No, I can't. But the opacity is always a grayscale, because it's either white or black or in between for masking. Okay, so I want to make the white this color. So I'm gonna plug this into here, and then I'm gonna drag off the uniform color, and I'm gonna type HSL. Now HSL is hue, saturation, and lightness. I don't know why this one isn't an L for lightness, because it's the same thing, but whatever. So the reason why I'm using this is because if I make a change to this color, it's going to make that change to this one as well. So the beauty of Substance Designer is proceduralness. So like if you make a change, that change will flow all the way down your graph, and it won't require you to like basically redo the graph, because now you have to account for that new input. Everything is just automatically gets updated for you, which is great. Okay, so we're gonna plug this on top, and then we're gonna double click our blend to see what's happening. Now, nothing happens because right now these two colors are the same. So I am going to lower the lightness so that the colors are different. Now I am going to swap these two. So now you can see here that by using this mask, my tiles are the foreground and my non-tiles are the background. So let's organize this. Boom. Actually, it should be like this and like this. And then we're going to plug this into here. And then we're actually going to just do an HSL. We're going to use this HSL as a placeholder, because every time you, let's say we grab this strand here and we type in a node, let's say blend. Whoops. Whoa, 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 chill out. If we grab this and we do blend, it puts it in the middle point between the two nodes. So I don't want to have to zoom out and like drag around all the time. So I'm just going to use this as a placeholder. So then when I do another blend, it'll drop it closer to me. I don't have to like, oh, where is it? And, do the thing. So I'm going to backspace that so I don't break the connection. Okay. Now I want to make the difference a little bit more noticeable, because right now it's very subtle. So I'm going to go with like that. Now I'm not really loving this color too much, so, and I'll show these values at the very end. So for now, just experiment with your own colors, or just try and match as best as you can. I know sometimes it's frustrating to pause the video to see the values, but I'm going to be changing them constantly, so don't worry too much about it. Alright, so we're doing 0.3, 0.03, 0.7, and 0.675. Okay, see, so now that I changed this hue, it changes this one. So again, it's all about that procedurability, if that's a word. Alright, great. Now we can call this done. We have our color. Just kidding. Okay, so let's see. What can we do now to make this a little bit more interesting? Because right now it's looking kind of flat, looking kind of boring, but it's a start. So we're going to type in blend. And now what we want to do is, okay, so what we want to do is we want to add some color variation to the brick, to the tiles. So they're not all, the tiles are all the same color. We want them to still be the same, similar hue, but we want some to be a little darker, some to be a little brighter, you know, like that. Also, I noticed that in my original graph, I actually have this contrast set to 0, so that there's still a gradient here. So it's kind of, if you think of this as dirt, then it's kind of like the bottom of the tile is a little dirtier than the top. So you see a gradient between um, in the transition. So if we change this to 1, then the entire tile will be one color. Well, it would have to be like this. So if you look here, if we change the position to 1 and the contrast to 1, then from this point on of the tile, it's one color. But if we change this to 0 and change this to 0.5, then you can see that there's like a slight gradient. You can see it here. So again, make that to your liking. I'm gonna go back on that, and I'm just gonna make it I'm gonna have the gradient because I like the smooth transition. It's kind of like the dirt or whatever this is. It's like creeping up slowly onto the rest of the top of the tile. All right, so we want to add variation to our tiles. So we need a way to, we need a mask to tell our blend node, hey, make these tiles darker, these lighter, but still within the same color value. So we already have this. The more nodes you have in your graph, the more you're going to slow down Substance Designer. Now, for the most part, that's not really a problem, but when you're getting to super photorealistic, super detailed, you know, God mode levels of authors of materials, and you're using 4K textures and this and that, and you're getting fancy with it, it can start to like slow down a little bit. So it's always, when possible, it's always good to reuse nodes that you already exist. If you're wondering what this little number here is, it's just how many, what does this stand for again? Is it microseconds? I don't know. I forget. I used to know. But basically it's taking like 0.8 whatever seconds to render. So it's just, if it's a very expensive node, or you know, you notice that there was a hiccup there because it took 37 milliseconds. Yeah, milliseconds I think is the thing. Yeah, milliseconds to render it. So that's what that is. You can turn that on by going I think it's this. Yeah. Display timings. I mean, you don't really need it. I just have it because I think it looks cool, and everybody else had it when I was learning, so I figured why not. And it helps you realize, you know, which nodes are expensive and stuff. So you can see these are all pretty. Blends are the cheapest, obviously, because they're just kind of there. But like the tile sampler is pretty expensive. But just because it's red, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just telling you that it's taking a little longer to render. But anyways, and obviously that depends on your PC specs. Okay, so we're gonna reuse this. We're gonna drag off of it. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys a histogram. So histogram, if you remember, I think, what is it? Is it a shift? Yeah, it's a shift. This is a histogram scan, and if you remember the levels node, this thing, the values, sorry, not that. No, yeah, it is this one. Oh, it looks different, I think, because it's looking at RGB values, but if you plug in a grayscale, it goes just to grayscale values. Obviously, RGB has more values, so I think that's why it looks like this when it's unplugged. But right, so if we look at the values here, this this is called the histogram, and then this is a histogram scan, which now I'm piecing it together as I go, it seems like, this is obviously pulling some of these values. That's why I said it levels can do everything a histogram scan, but a histogram scan can't do everything a level does. It only does some of these things. So there's a bunch of different histogram things. So basically level stuff. And for example, this one is a histogram shift. If you move the position, it only has one slider in it. Basically, it changes the values. So instead of having to, oops, not that. Instead of having to copy paste and change the random seed, you can use a shift to basically mimic, in randomizer. So I'm going to use this to kind of just randomize this original one to get something different. And then I'm going to put this over, delete this one, we don't need that. Put that over here, or actually over here, that there, this there. And I'm going to pull from our original color, and I'm going to do another HSL. I'm going to plug this into the top, and then I'm going to make this darker. Let's go with like 0.45. Actually, yeah, let's make it drastic. So now we have these tiles. There are different colors where this is 1, this is the value of 1, and then this would be 0. So the darkest tile will be this color, and the brightest tile will be this color. And then everything in between will be somewhere between this and this. Now, obviously, if we zoom out here, you can see that it's working, but we don't want it to be this extreme. So what I'm going to do is I am going to mess around with the opacity slider here. I'm keeping this to copy, and I'm just going to slide this down. So if I bring it to 0, then it's just going to show me the background. But if I bring in some of the foreground, which is being masked by this, I can push some of my variation through. But I don't want all of it, so I'm going to do 0.5. I just want some of it. Now it's very subtle, but you can see there. Actually, every time I swap back to my original or my preview material, I have to redo my my settings. It's kind of annoying, but so 2.5, just to scale. Okay, so let's bring those back out. All right, so now we have some more variation. Which the more variation, the better. So now some of them are darker, some of them are brighter. That's great. So now what we can do here is let's add some noise to our color to kind of break it up. So I'm gonna bring in a crystal, similar, same node we used down here, because I'm trying to keep like this like motif or like this shape language so that it complements itself. So we're using the same kind of damage. We're going to do another blend. And then we are going to grab the output from this. And then we're going to do an HSL. We're going to plug this on top. And then we're going to plug this into the bottom. And then we're going to make this a little bit darker. Now, the reason why I'm taking the HSL from this is because I want to take this dark value or these different values and I want to darken them based on their original value, right? So if I plug this in here, then it's going to make all the noise the same kind of darkness. But because this tile is darker and this one is brighter, then I want them to be different rather than uniform. Hopefully that makes sense. Right? Because this lighter value is going to be different than this because these are totally different light values. Okay. Now this looks not good, so we're going to do some tweaking here. Pull this, give myself some more room here. And then I am going to do a scan. because we're familiar with it. And then I'm going to bring this back again to 0.5 to get my initial. And then I want to kind of tighten it up a little bit. And then I want to, let's see, I want to change the C to something random. And then we're going to lower the scale to, I don't know, let's do 12 for now. So I want to introduce some more color variation. But I don't want it to be this drastic. So we're going to increase the light here to like 0.49. We want to make it subtle, just to make it a little bit more interesting to look at. Now, we want to, we're having the same problem that we had earlier, where like this shape is coloring between the two. So we know how to fix that now. I'm going to select between these two, and I'm going to type in warp, but I want the vector warp. And right off the bat, I'm just going to change this vector warp grayscale value to 5. Again, 1 is enough. I just like to be super safe. I'll just go with 5. You can do 10, you can do 6, you can do 3. And then we need our input. So we already have that down here. So we're just going to make another connector thing. And we're going to drag. Now this is why when you see super complicated graphs, they're like all over the place. Because sometimes you have to do things like this. But I know that I'm using this track. So it helps keep me organized. So now we have this breakup. So now we don't have continuous noise like that. Now here it continues, but it's just by accident, right? It's not like this. So that's okay. So then we have something like this. I think it's still a little bit too drastic. So actually what we can do is you can tweak the lightness, or you can add our levels. And then while looking here, you can turn down the white value, and you can see that it's fading away. So I'd rather use this. So I'm gonna go like about there. And we'll tweak this again, so it's just for now it's 0.56 on the level out high. And then we are going to do one more. I'm gonna grab this, copy paste. Oops, put that down there. I'm gonna change this random seed again to something completely random. I'm gonna drag from there. But then this one was darker, so I'm gonna make this one lighter. I'm gonna go with like 0.52 on the lightness value. So now if we hide this and then bring it back, you can see that. So we have 3 values basically. We have our base value, we have darker noise, and then we have lighter noise. Now the lighter noise is a little overpowering, so we are going to lower our histogram here to make it a little bit more like this. I think we want to increase this to like 0.9 or like 0.85. We're going to do the same one over here. 0.85. Now we'll tweak this. I'm going to check with my preview and we'll come back. And then this is the copy paste, so it's 5.6 on the level that high as well. Alright. Now let me pause here real quick and see what else. Alright, so I looked over my graph and there's some couple things that I think we should do here. Okay, so this works, right? And it's probably good enough for the sake of the tutorial, but I'm going to push it a little bit further. I'm going to show you a couple other things. So first, let's change our histogram scan here to all the way up. And we're actually going to move this here, plug this back into the scan. and then put the scan into the warp, and then from the warp into the levels. Like that. And we're going to grab this stuff and make some more room. Next, so right now you can see here the harshness of our crystal. We want, I'm going to disable this so we only see this. Okay, so let's change our scale here of our crystals 1 to 10. Actually, I like 12. 12 wasn't bad. And we are gonna do a new node here called slope blur scale. Now, this is an example, so don't, this is something we're gonna delete. Let's say I have a shape node and I have a paraboloid like this. So it's basically a circle with, it's basically a disk with a gradient, right? Whoops. Like this. So what a slope blur does is nothing by default, but let's use a clouds 1 and put this into the slope input. You can see it doing something. By default, the sample is set to 8, so we're going to drag this up to get more resolution, and we're going to lower the intensity. Now at 0, it looks like the original shape, but if we increase the intensity a little bit, you can see that it's breaking up the edges. Now what this does is it blurs the slope. So a slope is basically anything that's between 1 and 0. So this is like a gradient or a slope, that's going to get blurred. So that's sample, that's intensity, and then we have a mode here, with three modes: blur, min, and max. I like to think of slope blur as a fancy edgeware. So for example, if we pull this back and add a levels, and we do this, right, where when we increase the white, so this is flat, this is going to slope, and then this is going to be flat again. And then if we look at our slope blur again, you can see that it's only doing it here, because this is only affecting slopes. If we look at blur, or if we look at min, the mode min, it basically eats away at the slope. If you look at max, it adds to the slope without eating away. So basically blur eats away and adds, min cuts away without adding, and then max adds without eating, without subtracting. So it's like both, one or the other. So typically with edgeware, you want to take away. So you will do this. So we're going to use this node, slope blur grayscale, over here. So we're going to delete this. Let's bring back our clouds 1 again. Plug this into the bottom. And obviously, every time you do a new slope, it's going to look like this until you turn the samples up. So now we're starting to get something here. Our intensity is too high. We want to go maybe about, I've already written this down, so like 1.67. And we want to use the mode min because we want to cut away. So now this is making this a little bit more interesting. So we're going to plug this in here. You can see here that it's, I'm going to bring this back up a little bit. Don't worry about this value just yet, but I'm just going to bring it up so that you guys can see it. So I'm going to go with lightness of 4.75 here. So now you can see it's a little bit more interesting, the noise that we have here, but we're not done. I'm going to move this over here, and then we're going to blur. We're going to blur this. So this is a new node. This is something you'll be using often. It's called Blur HQ Grayscale. The HQ stands for high quality. And you get two sliders. You get intensity and quality. This should always be turned to 1. Why? I don't know. It doesn't really make a difference, but everybody that I see use this changes it to a 1, and it's binary. It's either off or it's on. And I guess on makes it so it's high quality, but I never noticed the difference. But just make sure this is always at the 1 whenever you're using Blur HQ, and you'll have a good time. Okay, so Blur grayscale, blur HQ grayscale does what it says, it blurs. So again, at 0 is the original, and then as you add intensity, it's going to blur. So because you're blurring it, you're also blurring, the input here. So you can see what happens. I'm going to make this 0, and I'm going to blur it, and it's making it smoother, basically. So if you want to make anything smoother, you want to use a blur high quality. There's other ways, but this is one of them. So I'm going to make this 1.75. Okay. I'm going to put this over here. And you can also increase the scale on the clouds node. And obviously the higher the scale, the more warping you'll get. So we're just going to stick to 1. Okay, that's pretty good. Now this is going to feed into this. That's good. And then we have our levels, and then we have this. So now instead of having just this, where it's just jaggedy lines, we have some variation in our jaggedy lines. So it makes this look a little bit more interesting. Now obviously this is like spotted tiles, so we want to reduce it a little bit. And actually, let's go back to our crystal and make this 10. There we go. And then we're gonna do like 0.32 on just the level out high on the levels. Okay. Now we are going to delete that. We're going to copy and paste this. Plug that in there. Now this is going to keep the warp connector. So we're just going to extend this a little bit. Like that. Now here we're using a complete, we copied the crystal. But I'm going to show you guys a little trick to save on performance. Again, we don't want to keep using, you can, if you're using, if you're making like a small material, but I'm just going to show you another cool node here. And this one's called the 2D, or the transform 2D. If you type in 2D, it comes up. And basically, this lets you manipulate the texture so you can move it. You can, rotate it. I wish there was a slider for it, but we can do like 45 degrees, 90 degrees, and it keeps the tileability. Something important I forgot to mention. If you are looking at anything in here, and then you press spacebar, it basically extends the texture visually so that you can see the tileability. So when you zoom out, you can see the tileability of it. So this is a good way to check to see if your tileability is breaking. By that I mean, because I rotated this texture 45 degrees, I'm going to turn it back 45 degrees negative so it goes back to where it was. If you move it, technically you're not breaking the tileability because you're just moving it. But if you were to rotate, it breaks the tileability. Now there are ways to fix it, but we're not going to go into that in this video. I think this is already becoming a little too long for my taste. But spacebar lets you see that, because if you were working like this, you really wouldn't tell. So you hit spacebar and it extends your view. So I don't know why I deleted that, but I'm going to bring it back. Transform 2D. And what I'm going to use this for is I'm going to rotate this texture upside down. So you can type in 180, or you can just click this 180 quick button here. And if you click it, it flips it. So it's a cheap way to just kind of like, by flipping it, you're kind of like changing the texture a little bit. So I'm just going to put that over here. And I'm going to add a little thing here so that I can track this a little better. Because otherwise it's going to go through the middle and it's hard to tell. And then I'm going to plug this in here. So technically we're still using the same seed, but it's rotated, so it makes it different already. It's a good way to get variation without having to make the crystal node every single time over and over again. Okay. So now, there's one thing I forgot to do, and I will show you what the problem is. Let's bring this back. If we, should be like that, yeah. If we hide this, because it's a problem, it's happening here and here. If we look closely, you can see here that our mask is failing somewhere. We only want this noise to be on the tile, not on where there is no tile. So we have to subtract from the mask, because this is our mask, and we need to subtract what isn't part of the tiles from the noise. So I'm gonna grab this. We need one more space, and we're gonna type select this, and we're gonna do blend. Now this is happening between this levels, the opacity, the mask. Now we need to subtract. We need to subtract 100% of what isn't a tile. So we have this. Now this is telling us where the tile is and where it isn't. But there's a gradient here. So we want to get rid of this gradient. And we already know how because we're professionals at histogram scans. So I am going to trace where this came from, which came from here. And I'm just going to put this over here, and I'm going to type in scan again. I could drag from this into here, but I'd rather just keep it this way and keep it simple. Now this is going to be a very important mask because I'm going to be using this one a lot. So I'm going to increase the position and increase the contrast. So now it has a hard fall off between what's brick or what's tile and what isn't. So there is a way over here, if you hit this little pin thing, whoops, no, not the pin, this thing, the frame, you can frame notes. So this is a way to like highlight what's important. So I'm going to call this one tile mask because it's super important. So actually I'm going to move this down a little bit. So I know exactly where it is and what it does, what it do. Okay, so now the reason that we need this is because we are going to invert it. You can extend the frame. Now the reason why I want two versions, because sometimes I might say, hey, I need this thing to happen inside of the tile, and in other cases, like this current case that we're on, hey, I need to subtract what isn't on the tile. So I need both versions, and this one just an invert grayscale, so it's just the opposite of this. So in this case, I need to subtract the noise from this mask. Actually, I need to do it back here as well. Let's start here. So actually, let's move this back. Like that. Okay, so what I mean by that is, let's move this back one more. Oh no, it's probably a little annoying. Okay, so we're going to do a blend here, and we'll come back to that other one in a second. So what we're going to do is, so you can see here it's fine, right? No issues, no issues. And then here, oh, there's an issue. If we get really close here, you can see that this is weird, right? So there's something wrong with our mask. So this is something you sometimes notice at the end, and you're like, oh, wait a second, and then you have to go back and fix it. But we're gonna fix that now because we caught it early. So we need to subtract. Okay, well, let's do that. I am going to actually here we're gonna get a little fancy with it. Let's grab this stuff. And we're gonna move it over here. Now we're going to use this. We're going to multiply, because like we said before, anything multiplied by 0 is going to give us a 0. So if we grab this guy and we multiply by this, so let's change this to multiply, it's going to, because this is white, anything by white gives us the same value, or by 1, sorry, and then anything by 0 will give us 0. This is above 0, so anything above 0 by 1 is going to retain the value, and then anything times 0 is going to give us 0. So now we're fixing this issue. So if we plug this in here, it fixes it. Okay, so that's good. So let's put that over here, move this over, move that over. Okay, so now let's continue our pipeline. Now this is a little darker because of what we did earlier with this over here. Where is it? Yeah, because of this. So that's okay, we want that. Okay, so there's no issues here. Let's go down to the next. No issues here. Oh no, okay, so we just fixed it. We don't need to do anything here then. We just needed to fix it here. Alright, well we're still gonna keep this here just in case we need it later. No, actually we do need to fix it. It just wasn't showing up because this was coming up as like nothing. Okay, so if we disable this, now it's broken. Because if you look at this noise here, it's painting this, which we don't want. So we're gonna subtract this if I had to change this to subtract. So this is what it was before. And then after we subtract, now it looks like this. So now it knows, hey, I don't want this here. So if you look over here as well, I'm going to hide this. Problem fixed. And actually, let's make this a little bit darker. There you go, I like that a little more. Okay, so now let's bring this back. And obviously this is going to have the same issue. So we need to fix it here as well. So same thing, I'm just going to copy this, paste it, bring it over here, plug this into the bottom, just like here. This was plugged in the middle, or the middle one. And then plug this in here. And then that should fix it. So if I hide this, broken, not broken. So let's add that there. Move this there. Move that there. And then let's keep this chain going. So I know if I ever need a mask, I can just follow this spaghetti strand here. Oh. Like that. Okay, not bad, not bad. Okay, now for the fun part. Now, like every good stylized material, texture, we need some edge highlights to make the texture pop a little bit more. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna grab the height, the last height blend before our levels, because this is just to hold. So instead of having this thing split from back here into 3, I'm just using this level without making any changes to it. It's just as a holder for me. So technically this is the last thing. So I'm just going to drag from here. And I'm going to type in normal. And this is the same thing as this. It's just a different one. And the reason why I have another one here is because I'm going to drag from it, and I'm going to type in normal. Now, when you type in normal from a normal, you get a bunch of other normals. So what I'm looking for here is normal. Oh, I should be typing in curve, sorry, without the E. And I get three curvatures. We get curvature, curvature smooth, and curvature Sobel or Sobel, whatever you want to call it. So I'm just going to drop these three so that we can see what they do, or the difference between them. Okay, so this one captures the curve. So where there is how do I explain this? I guess I like to paint. So what this is doing, let's say this is our tile, right? So the curvature node is picking up this curve and this curve. Okay? So it's going to highlight this as white. And let's say I had a shape like this. It's what's it called? Convex versus the other one where it's like, inner 90%, 80, inner 90-degree angle versus outer 90-degree angle. I forget what the terms are. Um, but this is going to be white and this is going to be black. So it's kind of like the crevice, and then this is kind of like pointing out and this is like pointing in. So that's why in here you see black and white. So if we go to our side view, this is black. So that's this. And then this slope right here, this curve is white. So that's curvature. Now if we look at curvature smooth, well, it does the same thing, but it smooths it. So it looks a little smooth. And then this is kind of like the in between, where it's smooth, but it's like tighter than this. So we're going to go with curvature smooth. Just want to delete that one. I'm going to leave this one down here so that we can compare afterwards. Just going to drag these out. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull out from this, and I'm going to do a scan. And I'm going to go 0.5. And I'm going to increase the contrast. And I'm going to go back to this normal here, and I'm going to make this super high, like 25. And then I am going to play around with this. So you can see here that I am trying to manipulate and trying to isolate my edges. So this is what we started with. And the values are there, right? So this is white, this is brighter than the rest. But now by increasing my contrast, I'm getting rid of all the grayscale, all the in-between basically. But I don't want to get rid of it completely. I just want to go maybe about 0.9. I want it to be a little bit of a fall off. I don't want it to be completely binary. Okay. And then if you want more of it, you can increase the... But remember, this is flat. That's why the white extends pretty fast. And the reason why it's expanding more here than there is because it's on a slope. So just remember that. So we just want a little bit of it. Okay. If you want it to catch the highlight of everything, then you want to connect this normal, this output here, before we added the gradient, before we added the high variance. So if you were to drag from here and then plug that in, because they're all sitting evenly, the normal map is able to recognize their location and their placement, and it'll give you that edge highlight on everything. But if you're just trying to catch the highlights on things that are more pointing upwards, then you want to that's when it depends on where you're pulling that normal from. From here, from here. So before the slopes and the height alter variation or afterwards. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so we're going to start with like after the variation, because if this is sinking into the ground, it's probably not going to be as highlighted as something that's sticking out of the ground. Um, okay, so we're going to need another blend, of course. And we're going to plug this into our mask, because obviously, hey, where it's white, do this color. So we are going to grab this and do another HSL, because we want to make sure that this brick is brighter than this, or this tile is brighter than this tile. Therefore, the edge highlight is going to be brighter on this one than this one, and we want to keep that. If we were to just use, a normal uniform, then the edge highlight would be the same on all the tiles, which we don't want. So it's always good to keep that in mind. Okay, so we're going to plug this in here, but we want it to be a brighter version of itself. So right now it's not doing anything because it's the same value, so we're going to increase the brightness. So this brightness here is brighter than this one because this tile is darker than this one. So let's go with like, let's make it a little brighter. So then here you can see the edge highlight. Now I think we need more of it, so I'm going to go back to our histogram scan. And I'm going to first look at it from this view. I'm going to increase it, but now I also want to reduce the contrast to tighten it up a little bit. So let's go all the way to 1. And let's make this 0.4. Now let's change this to, let's not go up to 50. Now we can try swapping these two to see what it looks like. Whoops. So this is giving us like a little bit more. Don't go too high. So maybe that's the look you're going for, but I'm not liking that too much. I'm going to go back to our curvature smooth. I'm going to delete this. Okay. Now remember, we're using the output after all the changes. So if we were to do it before we did the height and the slope variation, I'm going to drag from that and plug that in there. Then we're going to get a little bit more of a even edge. That's why if we undo that, that's why the edge highlights are only in specific spots. So I'm going to pause here and see what I did with the other one. See which one I like best. Okay, so yes, I did it before the height and the slope, so let's keep that going. So make sure you pull from this one. That way you get a more uniform edge highlight, like this. And then we're going to actually increase the position. Not too much, because then as you can see it's becoming a little too funny. Let's make it maybe like 0.35. Like that. Okay. Um, what's next? What's next? At the end of my my base color, I like to add a node called sharpen, which basically sharpens everything. So if we look at the before and then the after, or let's choose a different spot, like right here. So I'm going to hide it and bring it back. Hidden, with sharpen, without sharpen, with sharpen. But I think the default value of 1 is always a little too high. I always go with like 0.5. before and with it. Just makes it pop a little bit more. It tightens it up a little bit. Okay. And I think that is it for color, for now at least. Maybe we can come back and tweak some things. So if we were to change this, you can see that everything kind of changes based on that original color input, which is nice. Because then like if you made this one red and or like if you started with red and then you added like a brighter red uniform, like its own standalone, and then you change this wouldn't change. So then you'd have like red highlights on a blue brick or a blue tile. Sorry. So by making it this way, it all kind of like works off the original color, which is nice. Let's do a 0.035 for the original hue. Okay, now we're gonna look at the roughness, which is what makes this look a lot more interesting.